develop 217 in their skill set, trying to get them capable of taking over a portion of the city battle space by the end of the deployment, which ultimately occurred.
So what was the relationship between the Marines and the Iraqi Army? And two, you were saying that the Iraqi Army at that time was the only security force in Ramadi. Was there not a police force at that time, sir?
Right. There was not a police force. There were a few traffic police who would stand in checkpoint 295 occasionally. That was a major street intersection just to the west of the government center. But no organized police force. They had been run out of town by the terrorists in late 2004, early 2005. The relationship between the Marines and the soldiers was phenomenal. We embraced them. We got very close to them. In Lima Company's case, because we had a base in the city, we moved them onto our base. When we first showed up, you would have to drive to where the soldiers were located, either on Camp Ali, which is on Camp Ramadi, or down at the government center. You'd pick them up, bring them back to your base, do some combat prep with them, and then patrol. And at the conclusion of the patrol, you drive them back to wherever you got them. We developed a place on the base, barracks where they would live, and then we brought a squad on at first, and then it was a platoon, and it ended up being 2 companies of the battalion would live on a new base that we built just east of Snake Pit. We called it the Snake Pit Expansion, and that eventually became the battalion forward headquarters. So India Company did a tremendous job partnering with them, training them in a very high tempo pace. They would do 2 missions a day with the Iraqi Army, splitting their rifle platoons so that the platoon commander with basically a squad and a half and the platoon sergeant with a squad and a half, they would run separate missions so that you could get 2 missions out of the Iraqis that day. In that way, India Company developed their skills in a quantity mentality, getting a lot of experience done. When they would come to Lima, we would take a different approach of high quality at the cost of reduced quantity. And we would do 1 major sweep every 2 days or every 3 days with a lot of combat prep and then a lot of debrief afterwards. So it became a very complementary relationship, with India doing the majority of the basic skill development, and then we would try to take it to another level and do detailed offensive planning and intelligence processing, etc.
Was that the intent of the battalion, or is that just the way the training cycle, so to say, worked out?
The way we did it?
Yes, sir. Was that the battalion's intent, that Kilo was kind of to give the basics, and then Lima later on was going to give the more advanced training to the Iraqis?
Right. In India, the basics, Lima, the advanced, according to the way you just described it. No, it wasn't that way. It was, and it's not also a simple case where India was doing basic stuff and we did advanced stuff. That sounds too, distinctive to each other. It was very much a cooperative effort that evolved on its own. It wasn't a planned, a purposeful intent to do it that way. But we both basically did what we were good at to the benefit of the Iraqis. And in India Company, they had a very high tempo, focus on tempo. It was part of the personality of their company commander. He had been a vehicle platoon commander in LAR, Light Armored Reconnaissance, when he was a lieutenant. I had a more probably unconventional view where I didn't see the value in having to do repetitive operations on some sort of tempo. I had also had some negative experiences in the previous deployment with being a slave to tempo. I'm not saying India Company was. So I had just a different focus on getting more difficult operations done, which took, of necessity, longer time. And after this developed in the beginning, we realized, India Company and Lima Company, that we were doing things differently. And we thought for a period of time, should we change it? Should we mimic each other? But then when we looked at it, we realized we were each giving the Iraqis something different, and they would rotate between us. So I would get first company on a particular week, then the first company would go to India, then they'd go on leave. When they came back, they'd come back to me. So it ended up being maintained that way by design, even though it sort of developed that way initially by accident or by chance.
Okay. I believe earlier I misspoke. I believe I called India Kilo.
Right.
So I apologize for that. And you say, sir, that the relationship with the Iraqi Army and the Marines was actually very good, which is, you know, kind of opposite from what many of us on the outside understand that y'all just tolerated the Iraqi Army, and however you had a very strong relationship with him.
Very strong.
Okay.
The misunderstanding couldn't be more profound in most people's